Now for nearly 2 hours we will discuss fairness and its function on the anxiety disorders. Here is the summary of what we will talk about. First, the history of the approach, the schema and domain studies and its relation with the psychological needs. And then we will talk about the hidden cousin of anxiety, fairness and/or consciousness, the basic need of human beings, justice. And lastly, we will try to cover some areas where we can use this concept in therapy. For remembering some basic concepts, I would like to start with definition of the schema. According to Beck, a schema is a structure for screening, coding and evaluating the stimuli that impinge on the organism. It is the mode by which the environment is broken down and organized into its many psychologically relevant facets. On the basis of schemas, the individual is able to categorize and interpret his experiences in a meaningful way. Later, within his schema-focused frame, Jung described early maladaptive schema as a broad, pervasive pattern which is made of memories, bodily sensations, emotions and cognitions. They are about oneself and one's relationships with others. They develop during childhood or adolescence and elaborated throughout one's lifetime. And they are dysfunctional. From now on, not to say early maladaptive schema each time, I will use the term schema instead. The characteristics of the schemas are as seen at the slide. A schema is a theme, not just a belief. There are adaptive and maladaptive schemas. The schemas we will talk about are the maladaptive ones. Most of them develop in pre-verbal periods. They are deeply entrenched patterns central to one's sense of self. They perpetuate themselves and erupt when triggered by everyday events relevant to the schema. Schemas are developed with the toxic frustration of psychological needs by traumatization, victimization and mistreatment. Sometimes too much of these needs can cause the schema. Selective internalization or identification are other origins. Personally, innate temperament looks like the strongest root for schemas, but I don't have evidences yet. Also, cultural influences are effective on development of the schemas. Core needs of childhood are safety, stable and predictable base, love, nurturing, attention, acceptance, praise, empathy, guidance, protection, and validation of feelings and needs. According to the researches, there are 18 schemas. The last schema is found at 1997. Since then, no other schema is found to be stable at other researches. So no need to memorize all. From this slide we can keep in mind that all the complaints spoken in therapy sessions are related to these 18 schemas. During the development phase of schema therapy, Jung postulated 5 schema domains. Domains are schema groups which are accepted to represent a core psychological need, each. The 5 titles you are seeing on the screen are the names of the problematic areas. In the next slide you will see these titles and their related core needs. Here are the core needs related with the schema domains. It is assumed these domains are connected with these needs. And when the need is unmet, related schemas of the domain occur. For example, when the secure attachment need is unmet during childhood, the schemas of the disconnection domain develops. Other needs are autonomy, freedom to express valid needs, spontaneity in play, and realistic limits and self-control. If we think of an individual as a one-cell organism, these are the needs that are necessary for the organism for a healthy life. If they are so little in the environment or absent at all, then the cell will have some problems. A schema has 2 main operations. It can perpetuate itself, and if the one is lucky, it heals. The individual's cognitive distortions, self-defeating life patterns and schema coping styles help the schema to maintain. The other operation of the schema is healing. This happens very seldom when the individual's unmet needs are met, overcoming the individual's coping styles that resist against the need. Schema coping styles are the ways in which a child adapts to a distressing childhood environment. It is the basic defense mechanisms of the organism. Freeze, flight and fight. In schema therapy we call them schema surrender, schema avoidance and schema overcompensation. Many specific individual coping responses are derived from these 3 broad styles. Here let's give an example for schemas, needs and coping styles. Peter is a son of a very protective and phobic parents. The mother herself has a panic disorder. And the father is also thinks and behaves parallel to his wife's fears. Peter is taken to the doctors when a little symptom occurs. He is not allowed to enter the kitchen alone in case of an injury. He is not allowed to play football with his friends as he might sweat and be sick or break his leg. He is not even allowed to use the balcony as he can fall. He is warned against every possible situations that can go wrong. His need for the autonomy is unmet. When entering the adolescence, he began to take his own precautions against the possible threats. He never went out to public places as he might be kidnapped. When he was a young adult, the picture remains the same. He can't drive a car because of the fear of an accident. Even he moves to another city for the university, he keeps to take precautions for his health and asks every daily detail to his parents. He had his first panic attack in his 20s and knocked the psychologist's door because of the insistence of his girlfriend. If we distribute the information to the schema categories, here the complaint is the panic attack. This is the part that Peter is aware of. The related schema is vulnerability to harm. His coping behaviors are avoiding to drive a car and measuring his blood pressure 3 times a day. And the basic need that he is lacking of is autonomy. He feels that a medical catastrophe is around him all the time and it is a matter of time one day he will face it. Jeffrey Young's Schema Questionnaire is a well-known instrument for investigating schemas. The latest version is Short Form 3, which is called YSQS3. It has 90 items and measures 18 schemas. Working on the Turkish version for the validity and reliability issues, we tried to find similar results with the other researchers. A questionnaire can be seen like a musical instrument. We need instruments to play and compose music. But to be able to play a song of other musicians' work in your own instrument, you have to have a agreed tuning system for the notes. Or else you think that you are playing a C, but it may be D in some other tuning system. So, to understand the schema structures within the psychological disorders, it will be a good idea to have a fine-tuned instruments that we can share our music as it is composed. To measure the psychometric properties of Young's Schema Questionnaire, many studies are done with different translations. The first-order factors, namely schemas, are consistent within these studies. So we can be sure that we are playing the same notes with other researchers and clinicians. But the results of the second-order factors, namely domains, are somewhat detuned. Such as, some researchers found 3. Some researchers found 4. And some others found 5 domains. Many researchers at the discussion parts of their articles pointed that further studies are needed with bigger and client data. For tuning up of the domain layer, we gathered a big client data with the help of 6 different centers in Turkey. Total sample size was 2,400 clients. We applied exploratory factor analysis to the first sample. And then, using the model we extracted from the first analysis, we made a confirmatory factor analysis with the second sample, and finally, with a little fine-tuning, we tested our model with the third one with confirmatory factor analysis. Here is a picture of our model. 18 schemas and 4 domains. The first-order factors, namely schemas, are consistent with the previous studies. So we can be sure that we are using the same tuning system. The number of the second-order factors was 4, like some of the previous research. But the links between schemas and domains were changed. Here is another table that summarizes our results. 4 domains and the 18 schemas that they are covering. The needs that we managed to confirm are as seen at the screen. They are love and belonging, self-respect, justice and security, and lastly, limits and patience. When we compare our results with Beck's core cognition domains, and with Abraham Maslow's The Hierarchy of Needs model, it looks like we are talking about similar need concepts. This presentation is about overvigilance domain, which is consisted of 6 schemas: vulnerability to harm, pessimism, abandonment, mistrust, self-sacrifice, and punitiveness. When we look at the relationship of the anxiety scores and these schemas, the first 4 of the schemas have the highest correlations with anxiety. The other 2 schemas look like having smaller correlation coefficients. Till now, we talked about the schemas, domains and needs. In the next video we will explain the schemas related with overvigilance domain, which bring us to the concept of fairness. And then we will see the domain-focused techniques for the resistant anxiety problems. Thanks for your interest and attention.